الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The topic for tonight's lecture is going to be about missed opportunities. This is a very important theme in Islam. If we go to the Holy Quran and the narrations from the Holy Prophets and Ahlul Bayt, peace upon them all, we find that there are a lot of narrations and a lot of verses of the Quran that speak about the topic of missed opportunities and seizing opportunities when they arise. And specifically in the Holy Quran, there is this notion of regret and making sure that you are never putting yourself in a situation of regret. The Holy Quran refers to the Day of Judgment as the Day of Regret. And it says that there will be a time, the first thing that happens when a human being passes away is that he asks God to bring him back so that he does righteous in that which he has left behind. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends back the reply that there is a barrier now and that there is no way to go back. And if we go to the prophetic narrations, we have many narrations that speak of these notions of regret and seizing the opportunity. One of them comes from the Holy Prophet, in which he tells us, make sure to seize 5 opportunities before you lose them. And these are that you seize the opportunity of your youth before old age, and your health before illness, and your wealth before poverty, and your free time before your busy time, and your life before your death. Now, if we turn to the events that took place in Karbala, what we would like to do tonight is to follow the path of Imam Hussein alayhi salam after he left Medina and he went towards Karbala. To see, because history tells us that there were many encounters between Imam Hussein alayhi salam and many personalities. And these became opportunities for these people to take and seize or to miss, to join the Imam or not to join the Imam. So before we go into the actual encounters, maybe a very quick recap to understand the context that led Imam al-Hussein into Karbala, just to keep the whole situation in mind to understand what we're talking about. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam lived in the city of al-Madinah al-Munawwara. Then the news reached that city that Muawiyah had died and Yazid was trying to make himself into the Khalifa at that time. So he sent orders all over the Islamic Empire, including Medina al-Munawwara, to force everyone to pay allegiance to Yazid. The news reached and the Imam was forced to pay his allegiance in Medina. The news reached from Damascus. And the Imam refused. Initially he didn't, but he was forced, so he made his refusal public to pay allegiance to someone like Yazid. And this meant that the Imam was going to be killed in Medina. So in 1 to 2 days after that, the Imam left the city of Medina, the city of his grandfather, towards Mecca. And he remained there for a couple of months. And then Yazid started sending assassins to try to assassinate the Imam while he was in Mecca. And this started to intensify, these activities against the Imam intensified while Yazid was preparing an entire army in the background to attack the Imam while he was in Mecca. And this meant that the Imam did not finish his pilgrimage and he left halfway through, because the Imam did not want to disrespect the sanctity of the Kaaba by having this army attack. And so the Imam headed towards Kufa. Why Kufa specifically? Because the Imam had received thousands upon thousands of letters from people who had expressed their interest in having the Imam become their leader, their Khalifa, their Imam. So 17,000 people had told the Imam that we want you to come to Kufa. This was the best place to go, even though the Imam had very strong doubts whether they would betray him or not. So the Imam headed towards Kufa, and on the way there, as he reached around the river of the Euphrates, there was a battalion. A battalion is a group that is dispatched from a bigger army to perform a specific function. It could be 1,000 to 3,000 men. This one was led by a group, by a man by the name of Al-Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. And this group basically ran parallel with the caravan of the Imam all along the river. So they would prevent the Imam from reaching the water on one side while the Imam is trying to head to Kufa, and their entire mission was to prevent the Imam from reaching Kufa. It wasn't to fight the Imam. So this meant that the Imam could not go, and that was the deal. Al-Hur made a deal with the Imam that so long as he does not go towards Kufa, he will not attack him. So the Imam starting to take another direction, and he ended up in Karbala. So the events that we want to talk about have to do with the encounters on this way. To see the kinds of opportunities that the Imam presented to some people that he met on the way, and whether they were able to seize them or miss those opportunities. So the first opportunity that we want to talk about has to do with a man that many people know very well in history by the name of Al-Farazdaq. Al-Farazdaq is a very known personality in history. He was a very famous poet, and poetry was of such importance at that time that if you were a famous poet, then you were a very famous personality as well. This is the same man who was known to be a follower of Ahlul Bayt, and a lover of Ahlul Bayt, and a supporter of Ahlul Bayt. The verses of poetry that he read in praise of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam eternalized his name, and many of us know them by heart. The incident is that we are told there's a man by the name of Hisham ibn Abd al-Malik, the 10th Khalifa of the dynasty of the Umayyad, who was trying to perform, after performing the Hajj, was trying to get to the black stone in the corner of the Kaaba, and he had his entourage, he had his soldiers with him trying to push through the people, and he still wasn't able to get there. And in frustration he stood aside waiting for things to calm down, and in the meantime there's this frail young man who comes, and as he starts walking towards the black stone, the masses that are around the Kaaba start splitting, and people kiss him and touch him while he's walking towards the black stone. And this young man walks all the way to the black stone and kisses it and walks away. So, of course, Hisham knows exactly who this man is. It's none other than our Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, and people recognized him and respected him. So when this happened in arrogance and condescension, he said, who does this man think he is that he can just walk to the black stone while someone like me can't make it? And at that time, Al-Farazdaq was actually hired by the Umayyad as a professional court poet. And he seized that opportunity, and he said the very famous verses of poetry that eternalized his name. And he basically answered this Khalifa, telling him, "O you who question, or O you who is questioning of the greatest, most generous and honorable man." That's how the verses of poetry start. You who have questions about the most generous and honorable man, if you are seeking answers, come to me. And then he starts by saying, it is he whose step is recognized by the valley of Mecca, and the house recognizes him, and the holy lands, and the sanctuary around them. And he went on to say his verses of praise of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. And in that specific event, he was imprisoned right away. He was working for them, he praised the Imam instead of praising the Khalifa, he was thrown in jail. This was a seized opportunity. But if we go back a few years before that incident, this same man encountered Imam Hussein alayhi salam in his way. The Imam was in his path, and Al-Farazdaq was going outside from Kufa. So when he saw the Imam, he asked the Imam why he had hurried outside of Mecca and not finished his pilgrimage. And the Imam told him, had I stayed longer, I would have been killed. And you tell me, how did you leave the Kufa? And he told him, I left the Kufa with people's hearts with you, but their swords with Bani Umayyah. Which basically tells us that he was very keen, very alert. He knew what was going on politically. He understood the landscape. But unfortunately, in that incident, he excused himself and left the Imam. He did not join the Imam in that situation. And that's why we do not have the name of the Farazzaq as one of the people who joined the Imam in his mission. He eternalized himself in another way. He supported Ahl al-Bayt with his tongue and his poetry later, but in that incident where the Imam needed another type of support, he was not there. If we fast forward to a second encounter from the Imam, we have that the Imam met with a man by the name of Ubaydullah ibn al-Hur al-Ju'fi. Now this man was known to be a very famous warrior. The campment, the caravan of the Imam, they reached a spot where there was a man all alone in a tent in the desert. And he had planted his weapons beside the tent. And this is a sign that the biggest warriors at that time used to do to announce that they were always ready for battle, that they were brave and courageous. So the Imam sent someone to him to tell him, the Imam wants to talk to you, Imam Hussein wants to talk to you. So Ubaydullah ibn al-Hur answered the man, the only reason I left Kufa was to avoid talking to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I don't want to be in a situation where he asks me to join him. So the messenger of the Imam left to tell the Imam himself came to see him. And he told him, Ubaydullah, you are a man with many, many sins in your life. What I'm offering you is that you join me, and in return I shall wash all your sins, and you will be in paradise eternally with me. And the answer of this man was to excuse himself from the Imam and tell him, at this time, I don't see how I can sacrifice myself. So instead, what I'm offering you, O Hussein, what I'm offering you is that you take my sword and my horse. They are of the best quality. And the Imam told him, if you are too greedy to give me yourself, I'm not looking to get your belongings. That's not why I came to talk to you. You can keep your belongings. And then the Imam added a line that we find again and again in all the encounters of the Imam, which basically said, the Imam told him to Ubaydullah, and he's going to repeat it to others, if you're not going to join me, at least be sure that you never put yourself in a situation where you hear our cries or see the injustice and the crimes that will be committed against us. Because if you do, and you do not help us in that situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to punish you eternally. And the man promised that this would not happen. Another encounter after this was with a man by the name of Amr ibn Qais al-Mashriqi. This man met the Imam a little bit later with his cousin. And apparently they were doing some sort of business transaction. They heard about the Imam having camped in a certain spot, so they went to visit the Imam themselves. And after a back and forth with the Imam asked them, are you going to join me? And the answer, before I say what their answer was, I want us to think about ourselves and our lives. Do we think this way or not? Because it may be laughable at first stance, because now it's after the fact and it's easy to say. But at that time nothing had happened. So the Imam tells them, are you going to join me? So the first man who tells us this story, Amr ibn Qais, he says, I said this and my cousin repeated the same words. He told the Imam, as you know, I am a man who has a very large family. And I have to take care of them. And I have a lot of business that keeps me very busy. And a lot of people have left their money and their merchandise with me, and I have to take care of it. So for all these reasons and all these responsibilities, I'm going to excuse myself from joining you. And then his cousin said the same thing, and both men left the Imam. One more missed opportunity. And then the last one that I wanted to mention from these missed opportunities was from a man by the name of Al-Tarmah ibn Adi, Al-Ta'i. This man was known to be one of the great companions of Imam Ali alayhi salam in his life. He was known for his courage, he was known for the size and the strength of his body, and he was known for his eloquence and his poetry. Much like many of the companions of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And he was known to be an excellent guide of the desert. And when he heard that the Imam was traveling with his caravan, he hurried to the Imam because he had a plan for the Imam, a proposal. And they say that on the way he encountered a few men, perhaps 3 men, that he also took with him to the Imam. And when he reached the Imam, those 3 men joined the Imam right away. But as for him, he came to the Imam and told him, I have just left Kufa. And what I have found there is the greatest army of soldiers that I have seen in my life. They are preparing behind the Kufa to head towards you. So the last thing that you should do is to head in that direction. So what I'm proposing is that you go to my people who live between 2 mountains, and you may find up to 20,000 supporters there. And the Imam thanked him and told him this is not going to happen for all sorts of reasons. We can't go into them right now. The Imam told him this cannot happen, but as for you, will you join us and support us in this or not? And Al-Turmah answered the Imam that he had some food to bring to his family and then he will be back. And the Imam answered him, if you must go and you want to come back, then please hurry. And of course this became a very much a missed opportunity for Al-Turmah. These are people who were considered to be followers of Ahlul Bayt at that time. And then we go to the other camp. Running out of time, I'll mention one example, one instance. That instance is one of the greatest companions of the Imam, a man by the name of Zuhair ibn al-Qayn. Who was Zuhair ibn al-Qayn? History tells us that Zuhair ibn al-Qayn at that time was between 55 and 65 years old. He was a very brave man. He was very respected by his own people. And at the same time, he was a very known, brave, courageous warrior. Many instances of battles that he was known for. Now maybe there's a quick point I want to mention before continuing here. Brothers and sisters, you know that these lectures are supposed to be very condensed in time. So we don't have time to go into the different theories and alternative investigations that we would need for a lot of these points. So what we're presenting is a classic theory. And this applies to everything we've said in the previous nights as well as tonight, for this point specifically and perhaps other points. We don't have time to go into an investigation. So I'm about to tell you what classic history tells us about Zuhair ibn al-Qayn. I have doubts, and there are scholars who have doubts about this theory, whether Zuhair ibn al-Qayn was truly a follower and a fan and a supporter of Uthman or not in his life. Al-Tabari is the first of the historians who mentions this, and Al-Balagari follows him. But the evidence they provide to support this is almost non-existent and very weak. And it doesn't really match the personality of Zuhair ibn al-Qayn. Still, we're going to present the classic theory for now. So Zuhair ibn al-Qayn was known in history, classic theory tells us, his whole life he avoided Ahlul Bayt. Not because he dislikes them, but he just stayed away. And we are told that of leaning, he was more of the Uthmani type. He was a fan and a supporter of the third Khalifa, Uthman ibn Affan. And we are told that in year 60, he decided to go and perform the pilgrimage with his wife and a few members of his family. So he went and performed the pilgrimage, and when he left, his caravan and the caravan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam became in parallel, very close and in close vicinity. And history tells us that he tried to avoid being too close to the caravan of the Imam because he didn't want the Imam to ask him to support him. He didn't want to be in that situation again. So the people with him tell us that he continued to avoid the Imam, either going faster or slower all the time, until they reached a point where there was no possibility but to camp in the same place as the caravan of the Imam. And the supporters of Zuhair ibn al-Qayn tell us that at that time they sat in a tent and they were sitting and eating. Imam Hussein alayhi salam sent one of his people to ask Zuhair to come and attend and talk to the Imam. He says, when the messenger of the Imam entered, we were eating. We dropped the food from our hand, and at that point, we were in the same situation that we've been trying to avoid all along. And in Arabic, they say it was as though birds were on their heads. Meaning, they were completely stunned. Zuhair did not know what to say. He doesn't want to say yes, he doesn't want to say no. And there was a long, awkward silence, and then the silence was broken by the wife of Zuhair. Her name was Delham bint Amr. She came to Zuhair and she told him, Subhanallah, the grandson of God's messenger is inviting you to talk to him, and you sit here and you have nothing to say. Why don't you at least go and see what he has to say, and then you can leave him. And history tells us he got up and went to talk to the Imam for a while, and he came back in a completely different mood. He was upbeat and he was happy because he was joining the Imam. He picked up his stuff quickly. He told the men around him they were all free to go or join him. And he told his wife, from this point on, she can consider herself as a divorcee to go back to her parents to take care of her, because he was joining the Imam and he knew what would happen. Now this is a man from whom the support of Imam Hussein should have been very surprising, given what history tells us. And yet, we see that he was absolutely steadfast and strong in his support of the Imam. He was asked right away, why did you change your mind? And he said, first, I remembered some words from a day we were in battle with Salman al-Muhammadi. We were in a battle, and the end of the battle, very difficult battle, we were victorious. And we were extremely happy. And Salman came to us and told us, remember this day of your happiness, because some of you will live to a day where you will need to defend the sons of the Holy Prophet. And if that day comes, you must be more happy at that time to defend them than you are today. So when I met the Imam right now, I remembered those words of Salman. And then we see on the 10th of Muharram, when Zuhair was fighting alongside Imam Hussein, history tells us that he was teased about the fact that he used to be a Uthmani. They told him, what made you change your mind, Zuhair? You used to be on Uthman's side and now you have joined Al-Hussein ibn Ali. And he said, I did not intend to join him, I did not even write to him, but our paths crossed. And when I spoke to him and I heard him and I saw him, I remembered the holiness and the sacredness of the Prophet. And I realized to what point you guys are betraying this man, the grandson of the Prophet, and I could not let him go. So I seized the opportunity. When we look at the lives of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, we see that they seized every day, every moment, every interaction they had as an opportunity. When we look at the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam from beginning to end, what distinguishes him from everyone else is that he jumped on opportunities. He was looking for opportunities. When others were reluctant, were hesitating, were fearful, the Imam jumps on those opportunities. This is a distinguishing feature of Ahlul Bayt, and their followers have to have the same distinguishing feature. Our lives are full of opportunities. The only reason why someone has a regret is because they miss an opportunity. We started the lecture with verses of the Quran and narrations that speak of regret. Anyone who lives by the way of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam cannot have a regret, because you seize the opportunities. You ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala